Now, I want to thank members of the media for coming. I see that you're here in large numbers. We also have several media organizations via Zoom. I want to recognize the presence of the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Honorable Alan Shastney. I want to also recognize our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sharon Belmar George. Also our Deputy Police Commissioner, Mr. Milton Daisy, and other members of the command center that are here this morning. It gives us great pleasure. We have just come from a very successful meeting with NEMAC, which includes a broad national stakeholder group. So we had members of the clergy, various civil society groups from the social and productive sectors of our economy. And coming out of that meeting, we worked together on putting together a set of protocols, which we will share to you in a few moments. Just before I do, I want to update the press on some of the accomplishments of the command center team in support of the health and wellness team. So the quarantine rooms have reduced. At the peak of the response to the pandemic, we had some 500 rooms across about 5 to 6 hotels, but now we're down to 153 rooms that we're using in various hotel facilities for quarantine. And this really is as the demand for quarantine space has actually declined. As you can imagine, when we were repatriating cruise ship passengers and repatriating individuals, returning nationals who were stuck abroad, the demand was actually much higher. As we go to Christmas, we see that there's an uptick in the number of applications from returning nationals wishing to return home for Christmas. And we are making sure that we build the capacity and we prepare ourselves to ensure that we have adequate quarantine space, and as well to have a very good strategy to blend with home quarantine. We are also very advanced in the tracking devices that we need to ensure we're able to see or to monitor the individuals that are in home quarantine. My information is that in 2 weeks' time we should have the process completed. We've done several trials in-house, so that is making significant headway. Registration of the registration portal at present, the individuals that are coming into our country, both returning nationals and tourists, are required to apply and register to ensure that they have all the necessary documents, a negative COVID test, that they have a reservations at a specific hotel, COVID-19 hotel if they are tourists, or they have approval for home quarantine, or they have a space at institutional quarantine. And so this is being done by the St. Lucia Tourism Authority. And what we want to do now is to automate this to make it a lot more efficient so that we can take on a lot more requests for registrations. We're doing quite well in working with our tourism and business sectors to reopen our economy. This is a very important aspect of our response. What we're trying to achieve is the perfect equilibrium between safety as well as optimizing commercial activity as we seek to rebuild our economy. The hotel sector, 80% of our rooms have been approved by the Ministry of Health and also by the Tourism Ministry. And these hotel rooms include some 58 villas which are indigenously owned, and we're very happy to see that the indigenous economy is returning nicely as we rebound. The taxi sector, we have approved some 500 taxi operators, but there are now some over 300 that are operating. They are mainly southern taxis and the taxi pegs from various hotels in the north and south and in the Soufriere. What we want to do is to expand this now to also include the people that are plying their trade on the internet, to allow them to be able to participate. A lot of them have expressed to us that they have loans and they have very challenging economic circumstances, and we would like to do everything possible to get them to participate as soon as we can. We have very good news on the airlift front, a very pivotal pillar as we seek to rebuild our economy and create jobs within the hospitality and other sectors that link integrally with the hospitality industry. And we see that as the UK reopen, it requires a lot of planning on our part, both in terms of our public health response. We would need to beef up our facilities at the airport, at the medical facility which we've established there, with a view to ensuring that we have very seamless processing of individuals that are coming through from high-risk areas in the main, as both our two main tourism markets continue to record high levels of cases. And so therefore, we're very pleased to see that on the airlift front, that a number of carriers from the UK have already conclusively set their dates to return into St. Lucia. So December 3rd, we have Thomson Airline from Gatwick Airport. December 5th, we have the same airline from Manchester, a flight that did not exist pre-COVID. We also have December 10th, British Airways from Gatwick. They go to a daily service on December 12th, which is very significant. We also have British Airways on the 27th of December, and also the 3rd of January. They have added extra flights because of the significant demand that we're seeing from the UK market. This is largely driven by our strategic marketing approach. We have actually put a lot of money into driving demand for St. Lucia, as we suspect that the British public, having been through a lot of the lockdowns and restrictions from COVID-19, may be somewhat wary of the COVID protocols of that country and may want to go somewhere for a vacation. And so we were correct in our analysis, and we're seeing significant demand from the UK market for St. Lucia. This will do very, very well for hotel employees. They will have more consistent hours, moving away a bit from the rotation scenario that exists in some of our properties, but as well to rehire at greater numbers we should see from our industry. And so we remain at level 2 with the Center for Disease Control. So even though we see that we have an uptick in the number of cases locally, the last report that we have seen is that while there are 18 Caribbean countries at level 3 or more, and 5 that are in level 4, St. Lucia remains at level 2, and we're only about 7 Caribbean countries that have received this rating from the Center for Disease Control. So this really is a great demonstration of confidence in our public health scenario, in our COVID strategy that we have put forward by our medical team at the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So I want to, at this point, stop here for now. I will ask our CMO to give us the latest update with the situation in our health sector, and then I will read out the decisions that we have made at the NEMAC meeting.
Thank you very much, Minister Chair, and good morning to all. On a global level, the number of new cases being reported continues to rise, with over 4 million new cases noted within the last week. We also note a number of new deaths globally continues to grow up by 11%, with over 67,000 new deaths reported. The European region continues to show the greatest increase, with the region of the Americas coming in second. On a local level, we've noted a total of 238 confirmed cases from March up till November. We presently have 127 active cases with 109 recoveries. We've noted 2 deaths, and all of our active cases are all stable. We presently have no one in critical condition within our our care. From our total number of confirmed cases, we've had a total of 33 imported cases and 205 in-country cases. We've also conducted a total of 15,448 tests so far. We presently have 110 persons in isolation and 365 persons in quarantine. From the total number of cases that we've seen thus far, the age group that is most widely affected is a 25 to 49 age group, which makes up 54% of our cases thus far. In terms of the incidence by region, can we go to the next slide? Okay, in terms of the island distribution and incidence rates, if you notice the dark blue blocks, they're indicating the number of cases. You'll see that in the Grosley area, we've noticed the highest number, followed by the Castries area. But if you look at the incidence, looking at the population number for those areas, looking at the incidence rates, you'll notice the highest incidence is in Labrie presently. We've also had 9 cases from the cargo vessel that we saw earlier in the week as well. Our current epidemiological curve shows a general upward trend still. From what we are seeing, we have not yet peaked. We still notice an increase, although the rate of increase has reduced. In the beginning of the outbreak, our R0, that is our rate of transmission, was below 0, but as we progressed into October and November, we noted increases in our transmission rate, moving from 1.9 to 3.9 to 3.5, and we presently, in the last 2 weeks of November, we've noticed a transmission rate of 3. When we look a little bit closer over the last few weeks, we note that the steep trend that we saw in October, within the month of November, the rate of increase is less, so that is, it is beginning to plateau. That is, the rate is less after the last 2 weeks in November. That being said, with a transmission rate of 3 and having 127 active cases in country, it means that we are still in a very critical position, and we are not in a position to yet relax the measures as we note that things are improving in country. There is a potential within the next 14 days of noting over 1,000 cases if we relax the measures or we continue to adhere to the protocols that have been recommended. So from our forecasting, we predict that if we do not continue, if we don't adhere to the protocols, if we don't hold back, if we don't break the transmission rate, there is a possibility of more cases. So hence some of the recommendations, and those recommendations come from what we note from the positive cases based on our contact tracers, and also from the reviews by our environmental health officers on the ground of the services in terms of implementations of the protocols that have been put through thus far. Thank you.
Thank you, CMO. If I may just invite the Deputy Police Commissioner, Mr. Milton Daisy, to also update you on some of the big accomplishments of the police force over the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Yes, good morning. The Royal St. Lucia Police Force continues with its effort to aim at causing persons to enforce the protocols set out by the Ministry of Health. We are doing that not without challenges. It is very challenging at times, but I must inform you that the police officers are up to doing it. During our enforcement efforts, we have had many patrols. In fact, every police station and major units in the police force are carrying out daily patrols. And I must inform you that during these patrols, they would record persons that have been warned, persons who have been spoken to, persons they have encouraged to adhere to protocols. Also, during the time of patrols, they have had to close some establishments, and most of which being the community bars, where they are not complying. Some persons have been arrested, especially when persons have been warned on several occasions. There have been instances where at least 15 persons have been found in bars that are closed from the front, but the back door is either halfway opened or persons are inside carrying out activities. Now, you'd realize that as part of the protocol, bars were only supposed to have been opened up to 4 p.m. daily, and bars with grocery shops or restaurants and so on had to be, the closure time was 9 p.m. We have had instances where at 11:45, almost midnight, police have to be closing bars. This, I believe, it is not in compliance with what we are trying to achieve. Today, in two separate joint operations, that is with the Marine Unit and Territorial Police, Land Police, we were able to intercept in these two instances 2 vessels coming in from Matnik. Those vessels, the persons in each instance, we had four persons on board. Those persons in both instances were arrested. And also the vessels were impounded. You would recall that on the last occasion, it was mentioned that we would be employing wardens to assist the police in enforcing the various protocols. And I must inform you that we received those applications, probably in excess of 500 applications. We did a short listing of the numbers. The individuals shortlisted had been briefed and interviewed, and for final selection. I must also inform you that today, this morning, that we did our final selection. The persons selected would be coming in as of next week for some training. You would appreciate that to have persons new coming into the job, that they would need some briefings, they would need some training in terms of writing reports, that is, writing station diaries, the mode of patrol, and so on. During the initial training, which we are expecting to be at least a week, the officers would be paired with senior officers during patrol so that they would be acquainted with patrol procedures, what is required of them, and so on. After which, the officers would be good to be on the road performing the duties. During the performance of the duties, these wardens would be paired with officers so that officers would take the lead, officers would supervise them. They would be in various districts so that this would give them the opportunity to deal with COVID issues, and the police officers, especially at this season, Christmas season, would deal with matters of the criminal nature. That does not prevent the officers, that is the regular officers, from assisting with COVID, but we believe the addition to the team we would allow these new officers to do the COVID patrols and for us to do the crime fighting efforts. I must thank all heads of department and station commanders of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, and especially the officers, the frontliners, who have been doing a great job from day one, especially the COVID situation. This does not come, as I said, without challenges, where officers themselves have had cause to be quarantined, both home quarantine and institutional quarantine. So the numbers of officers available for duty had been dwindling, and I must say a big thanks for the Prime Minister and his cabinet, who have agreed to appoint this additional resource for us. I am assuring the members of the public that we are doing all in our powers to ensure safety and a safe St. Lucia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daisy. Okay, and now, based on what we've heard from the two agencies, Health and National Security, we are going to read out some of the decisions that we made today. Basically, there were about 7 recommendations, and the 6 that are, I'm going to share with you, 7 recommendations. So we continue to work from home where possible. Recommendation number 1, we're going to just show members of the press the deep dive into the slides. So here we go. Recommendation number 1, all agencies are going to have a blend. This stays. The list of protocols that we're sharing now would be from December 1 to December 14th. So you would have had visibility of this particular decision. There was no change made by the NEMAC group, which includes members of the private sector, civil society, and the clergy. Recommendation number 2, we also have all business operations and commercial activities must end by 9 p.m. daily, as guided by the COVID-19 Prevention and Control Act, Section 17(2)(b). And this basically sticks to closing all commercial activity by 9 p.m. to allow employees to get home by 10 p.m. Separate provisions, of course, will apply for necessary sectors such as the essential services, the construction, manufacturing, and call centers, which we understand would have some very late working hours. We're trying our best as much as we can to create as little disruption to our economy as we attempt to strike the balance between the public health measures, but also to allow our economy to thrive. Recommendation number 3 includes restrictions on all social gatherings. We made one change here for churches. This particular slide would actually try to prohibit birthday parties, retirement parties, wedding receptions, funeral receptions, wakes, boat rides, beach picnics, etc. However, there are some exceptions that are made for the celebration, including, if we can go to the next slide, Part B. There are some restrictions that are made for special religious rites, including christenings, weddings, funerals, will be limited to 25 individuals. So while, for example, in the case of a wedding, we're going to have the religious ceremony is not prohibited, neither is the christening nor the funeral service at the church level is being is allowed. It is prohibited for the social aspect, so the reception that comes with it. we're actually asking individuals to desist from that for the time being. Recommend the churches, we have actually reverted to an old protocol. So the change here that is necessary is where we would have had a limitation of 25 individuals, but now we're saying that we can revert to the square footage by the churches. This has been motivated because our church leaders have done a tremendous job in enforcing the protocol and in ensuring that there's order. And we also want to thank their members of their congregation for the tremendous job that they have done in helping us to enforce the protocols and to comply with the COVID regulations every time we put them out. Recommendation number 4, or decision number 4 at this point, the consumption of alcohol on the premises. This continues to be prohibited. We're asking that the bars operate on a takeaway service only, and that is up to 4 p.m. And in the case of gas stations and supermarkets and other business places of the like, they will be permitted to sell alcohol up to 9 p.m. We go on now to decision number 5, or part B of decision number 4. Restaurants and food vendors will continue to provide takeaway services. And in the case of restaurants, we are allowing them to open until 9 o'clock, as is the case for the time stipulated for all commercial activity to end. Decision number 5, restrictions on all sporting activity. This was a previous protocol, but we've made an adjustment here to allow for personal coaching and personal development to take place on a one-on-one basis. We have received a number of requests from national sporting associations for them to be able to allow for persons to receive the level of development that's necessary, especially national athletes, and we want to ensure that we don't endanger the level of performance or the success rate of our national sporting teams. Decision number 6. Special permission for face-to-face evaluations in those parts of the education system where students may have special examination preparations. We don't want to, for example, at the secondary school level, endanger the performances of our students at the CXC examinations, nor at the primary school level where students are going to be preparing for common entrance in the coming months. So we want to ensure that we give all of our students the best chance to succeed. So we're allowing a limited amount of face-to-face tuition to take place in these cases. We also have made allowance for tertiary level schools in medical and natural science programs that may require the students to go into labs and to do practical evaluations. And so there will be a blend of face-to-face tuition and also virtually, in order to allow for our students to be able to excel at their common entrance examinations. So I stop here, and I think, Mr. Prime Minister, it is time for you to address the press before we take questions.
Thank you very much, and good, I think it's good morning still for everyone. First of all, I want to again thank all of the officers involved, from the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Security, the Ministry of Tourism, and new minister and heading up the command center. I also want to thank all the members of NEMAC. So leading up to today's meeting again, there was a presentation to Cabinet yesterday afternoon, and then there was a presentation to NEMAC this morning with the protocols that you're seeing in place, and we continue to be very inclusive in our approach. Unfortunately, many solutions would know that we've had cases of COVID within our communities, and the ministry and the government have been, the Ministry of Health, that is, along with the other ministries, have been attempting to curtail the numbers as much as possible. And so I'm grateful to know that the interventions that we have imposed over the last 2 weeks have been working, and we have seen an improvement. But I think, as the CMOs indicated, we certainly have not seen enough of an improvement to relax some of the protocols. We have changed some of them. I'm very heartened by the change with the religious institutions. I think that this is a critical institution. You know, as much as we need food, we also need prayer, and we need faith. And we're all very comfortable that the churches have been doing a very good job in maintaining the necessary protocols. But the DNA, or the core theme behind these protocols, are to reduce the amount of socializing. So, you know, we're encouraging St. Lucians to continue to go to work, continue to ask for workplaces to heightened observation of the necessary protocols. There are areas in which it's almost impossible to provide a complete safe environment. And one of those examples is the bus transportation system. So, you know, persons who constantly point to that anomaly with the buses, unfortunately, it's a critical part of St. Lucians getting around this country, and it's not something that we can cut out. So in understanding that, then we need to see even more adherence to the rules when persons are traveling the buses. And this is why the introduction of the inspection officers for COVID, some of you have categorized as being wardens, is necessary. We're not seeing a sufficient level of adherence to the protocols. Many St. Lucians have taken up the call and are practicing the necessary protocols, but there's still too many of us who are not doing that. And so the enforcement officers will be out. Their recruiting, as you've heard, is already begun, and I'm hoping that certainly within a week or so that these officers will be out. And I'm really hopeful that in the next 2 weeks that we'll continue to see the numbers trending in the right direction, and that with the enforcement officers out, that we now can feel that we can maybe lax some of the rules that we currently have. Because if in fact we had adherence to the wearing the face mask, many of these protocols that we've put in place would be unnecessary. So we do know that we can coexist with COVID, but it does require 100% participation in the protocols. Any breach exposes all of us, exposes ourselves, exposes our family members, and more importantly, exposes the more vulnerable persons in our society. And I would have thought that those were compelling enough reasons for everyone to strictly adhere. Sadly, some persons are not doing it, and maybe like in school, they need to have somebody constantly reminding them of what they need to do. And so the new officers that we're bringing in, which are persons who had previously applied, many of them, to become police officers. So the police are using this opportunity to give them some additional training, and in essence, creating a recruitment group moving forward. So I'm very grateful to the commissioner and the deputy commissioner for their assistance in this matter. I also want to say that the protocols that we established from the beginning of creating a tourism bubble has worked, and worked, one, on that there's been no examples or cases of any tourist spreading the virus here or transferring the virus to any local person, but also have worked from a commercial perspective. I'm very proud of the fact that St. Lucia has seen the fastest recovery in the southern part of the Caribbean in tourism, and we've been able to do so safely. And so therefore the protocols that we have in place are very appropriate and have been incredibly successful. And the minister alluded to the fact now that the UK is reopening its borders, that BA is going to be going daily and TUI is coming in, and we are working very hard to regain our status at CDC back to level 1 or even less. And I think that if we can continue to see the trends that we're seeing right now, that we more than likely can do that. And it's very important that we do that before the new administration comes into office, because I certainly believe that the protocols that New York State and now Pennsylvania have adopted will become for the United States, meaning that anybody who's coming from a country of CDC level 2 or higher, that those persons will be required to be pre-tested before they go back into the States, or they will have to go into quarantine. And we've seen that once you have to have quarantine on returning home, that it significantly impacts the amount of persons that are willing to travel. So from a commercial perspective, it's very, very important. We continue to see that our economic recovery plan is working. The number of jobs in the construction area, and we've also been able to, through this very difficult time, to continue to see our call centers grow. And I want to thank the call centers in particular for the adherence to the protocols that they have been observing. And certainly every single time that there's been any cases that even come close to their back door, as to how quickly they've responded. And I really appreciate their support in that regard, and keeping many of the businesses open. This is not to say that there are some businesses that have been badly affected. We're seeing that our restaurateurs and our bar owners and our nightclub owners, as well as some of our attractions, and probably the largest one being the rent-a-car business, have been severely impacted. And as I indicated, as we moved away from macro policies for economic recovery, we're now doing a much more targeted approach. So we will be meeting with the restaurateurs and the bar owners. We are meeting with the rent-a-car companies, and we're also going to continue to meet with the persons in the taxi industry, as well as the attractions, because these are the more affected areas as we've been reopening. And certainly some of the villa owners and some of the smaller hotel owners that are isolated, meaning that there's impractical for a person to come in vacation in their resort because they don't have enough services to provide the bubble that we've established for ourselves. So this is not to say that there are not persons who have been affected, but we continue to try to open up as many sections of our economy as possible to help in the overall economic recovery. So that being said, I just want to again thank the population for their continued support. Let you know that the government is working with all parties to try to implement the most effective protocols to protect lives, and also very much to protect livelihoods of everyone in St. Lucia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. We now open up the floor for questions from members of the press. You've been eagerly awaiting. I see Lucia has already positioned her index finger to the air to suggest that she has a question. Lucia from Choice TV.
First, I want to start with the 8 people who've been intercepted today coming in illegally. We speak a lot about backdoor entry, and we see a lot of people coming from market, which is so close to us. Have we created any sort of relationship between the French government to get these St. Lucians who want to come home over here in a legal manner and possibly facilitate them in quarantine?
Yeah, that one is not me. Yeah.
Good. I think it's afternoon now. Good afternoon, Ms. Charlemagne. We have been working with the council over in Martinique from our closure of the border, because as you're aware, a lot of our patients get health care over in Martinique. So we've been able to put this in to ensure that there is regular transfer from St. Lucia to Martinique to facilitate this. And we'd also put measures in place for St. Lucians who were willing to come back. A lot of them were in the initial batch who came in for quarantine. So we continue to facilitate persons who want to come in back home or come into St. Lucia through that mechanism, working with her. And she informs us of those on a regular basis, and we do accommodate them as needed. As you're aware, we also, especially for persons needing medical care or persons who can't afford, we provide the quarantine time free of charge. So there is a mechanism to facilitate the the safe and legal re-entry of St. Lucians coming into country.
Yes, just to add on what CMO has said, most of what the intelligence has shown is that most of the persons coming in through the back door, they left St. Lucia through the back door also, and those individuals would not want to come through the legal means. So their way of going out and in to the country is through the back door. So, and most of them, it's not like they were in Matnik. They just had gone for a day or two. So those persons are not, even I know that arrangements through CMO is made with the consulate in Matnik, but they would not choose that means of transportation.
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you, CMO, and also the Commissioner for, do you have any follow-up questions?
Of the recent incident involving a local trying to gain access into one of the hotels, when will we see the opening up of the tourism sector to our very own locals who are willing to play their part in stimulating the economy? I know we spoke of the tourism bubble where we have locals going over to other islands, but then we don't allow our own locals to enjoy staycations here.
You want me to answer you? Go ahead. So in fact, that they are allowed to do so. So we do have hotels that are not in the tourism bubble and continue to offer their facilities for locals. So they are villa owners. I don't want to plug any particular hotel, but they are hotels that are not bringing in tourists internationally, because as I said to you before, they're not able to provide the environment that's conducive to that. So there are some of those hotels available. I'm sure that the Tourism Authority and as well as the Hotels Association after this will be able to give you some of the names of some of those facilities that people can take vacations. So even in opening up, when we were opening up and when you had a handful of hotels, many of the other hotels were surviving by offering those services to locals.
These hotels who offer to locals, are they COVID-19 certified as well?
I don't think they're COVID certified, but I would imagine that they would have understood what the protocols are. The COVID certification really was for when you were bringing in the foreigners and you want to be part of the bubble. But they do follow the normal protocols that are being established here. These are smaller, obviously, facilities. They're not the larger resorts type of properties. So I know that Coconut Bay, as an example, would be one of the favorite places that a lot of locals would go to. That certainly would not be available to locals. But there are other hotels on the island that are currently not open to international tourists, but are certainly open to locals.
The change in protocol seems to be very limited. There isn't much change to what we were made aware of 2 weeks ago. Do we think that those protocols in place 2 weeks ago and now very limited changes are actually working, or do we think that there is a need to have things a little bit more stringent?
Okay. Thanks again, Ms. Sharman, for your questions. I think we need to really take an in-depth review, which is what our team did of the protocols. The main issue is not the protocols that are in place, but our main issue is adherence to the protocols that are in place and our capacity to enforce. The protocols which we put in place for the various services, in an ideal situation, if we were to adhere to them, we would not need to put further restrictions on activities. With our phase reopening, if all of our various agencies would have adhered to those protocols, we would be able to live safely, even though we have positive persons in our environment. It would reduce transmission from a positive case to someone else. On the review by the contact tracers and by the Environmental Health Department, we saw breaches on a number of levels, even with the heightened protocols that were put in place for the last 2 weeks. One of them is the use of masks. the proper use of masks. Although we note an increase in the use of masks, the proper use of masks where persons have the mask and either their nose or their mouth is out, we continue to see that as a breach. Also, for some of the restrictions where we note increased transmission from our contact tracing, that is an increased number of persons getting sick, it's continued over the last 2 weeks. One of them is the bars that remained open until late with large numbers of persons in the bars. Also the social activities, especially at a community level, persons continue to have activities with numerous groups attending. We continue to see the breaches in relation to the minibus drivers and the increased number of persons without masks on, and the lack of physical distancing among various groups. Within town, within different organizations, we continue to see it. We're also very cognizant of the fact that we're getting into the Christmas season where there is a tradition of increased social activities. Also, some of the financial institutions which have been doing very well in terms of keeping the protocols, we anticipate breaches. So our department will be putting out a program to enforce some of this. We note the increase in sales, which generally means increased crowding in those stores. So we have to deal with a level of the population who's not adhering as before with those increased measures where people tend to go out more, people tend to shop more, people tend to go into stores, and with the reduced prices that we know that's being advertised. So the point where we are still in a very, very critical point for us. Here, we're coming into the holiday season, which is a symbol of socialization. It is very important that we keep to the measures if we are to see the gains that we want to see with flattening the curve and reducing our numbers.
We have a question on Zoom from Jacka. Jacka from Hot 7 TV. Jacka Wooding.
Good morning. I'm Jacka Wooding from VIC. First question is for Minister Sadie. With the expected increases in tourism arrivals and recent cases of COVID-19 infection requiring the retesting of visitors only to confirm positive infection, what adjustments have been made to potentially avoid a similar outcome? And what guarantee can be given to the St. Lucian public that there could be a reduction in such lapses in the future?
You know, Jacka, maybe the CMO should answer this question, because I think that if I do, you're going to perceive a certain prejudice to my industry since I'm the tourism minister. But I think that the CMO might be a lot more qualified to explain the whole medical and scientific rationale as it pertains to testing. But what I'll say is that one of the things you have to bear in mind, Jacka, is that our particular tourism industry, most of the people that come, the number one market is from the US. You have 7 nights, 5 to 7 nights is their length of stay. Now, if you take 2 days out of that for travel, 2 days it's already gone. If you institute a testing mechanism which then requires the guests to quarantine in their room for another 48 hours, another 2 days are gone. So it really leaves a guest that's coming for 5 days with 1 day to vacation. And then secondly as well, you have a scenario where those that are coming for 7 days would be here for only 3 days. So it would totally annihilate the tourism industry. I will let the CMO speak to the medical aspect of it so that you can have a bit more credibility than my voice. I'm only a student of her class because we meet every single day and we talk about COVID. But what I would tell you, I'm going to ask her to tell you instead.
Thank you very much for that question. From a public health point of view, we have been indicating the 3 main risk areas that we've noted with the phased reopening of the country. One of them is the high risk that exists within the tourism destinations. Another one is the illegal entry of persons And the third risk is the non-adherence or the breaches to home quarantine and the breaches to our protocols. When we moved through the phase reopening to phase 5 of tourism, we recognized that it was one of the high-risk services that we were opening, and hence the implementation of very stringent measures from day one. From a recommendation point of view from the Ministry of Health, the COVID-19 situation has been a very fluid one, which has made it necessary for us to continuously review our protocols, review our policies, looking to other countries, both regionally and internationally, on their best practice. Our protocols, our policies have not been set in stone. We also look to see what's happening in the region to improve on, first of all, the safety of our people, and as we moved into our moving on with tourism, getting a safe way to balance, because we also noted the mental health impact and other issues of the restrictions that were put very early. In terms of some of the measures that were put in place to facilitate safety of persons here was the pre-testing. And we note from a public health point of view that the closer that someone tests to traveling, the safer it is. So for us, we would have preferred 48 to 24 hours before coming. But in terms of the gold standard for testing being available to allow that, it was just not possible even for our returning nationals to get this test in time to come in. So we had to push back based on the impossibility of implementing this measure. As such, what we've put in place is our portal system where persons coming in with a test has to upload it on the stlucia.org website. So this allowed one measure of screening for tests, ensuring that first of all it is the valid PCR test that was coming in, and any tests that were not accurate, persons were not given that permission to come in. Our second level of screening occurs at the port. We've set up port health facilities both at the Leonora International Airport and the George Charles Airport, where our public health personnel would do another review of those results. And any results that are post-date or questionable, or if they're rapid tests or not the proper tests, those persons are testing on arrival. To give you an idea, from the period between July and September, we tested a total of 445 persons at the port with tests that were deemed either not appropriate or questionable from there. And these are persons coming into the country, to give you an idea. So we do, for visitors coming in with questionable tests, we do test those on arrival at the port. And the protocol, which the hotels are aware of, because when you leave the airport, you're given a colored band. We have a key. So depending on the color of the band, if you were retested because your test is questionable, you're placed in isolation at the hotel where you're not allowed to leave your room until that test result is provided. And that is usually within 24, 48 hours the most, to allow you to now leave your room. Based on that, we have heard of other countries with other protocols. Some countries at 3-5 days, they implement testing, and for us in St. Lucia, we need to look at the best practices both on a regional level and international, and also compare it to what is happening in country. With the St. Lucia model, we do not allow the tourists to leave their accommodation site unless for scheduled, approved sites and attractions, but they're not allowed to roam freely as in some of the other countries. In terms of testing, the PCR test or any test, it gives you a result as per that date. Given that COVID-19 has an incubation period of 14 days, and up to 7, up to 10 days, there's up to a 70% chance of someone getting positive. It begs the question, you have to weigh the measure that you put in place, and you also have to weigh the benefit that you get out of it. at what point during that 14 days do we test? Do we test every day? Because if we test day 1, day 2, day 3, day 5, at day 6, day 7, day 8, there is still a possibility of someone coming in. So we need to look at what the tourism product is for us. Here in St. Lucia, we need to look at what would be the most accurate time for testing, and we need to see how it would fit in a cost-benefit analysis for our own sector. We have been having extensive discussions both within our public health department as to if there is a need for testing, how to facilitate it, and we have looked at a protocol. We've also had discussions with the Regional Public Health Agency on what is the best practice for testing and for a tourism market which is still at high risk. And we are scheduled to meet with the local St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association to see how we accommodate any requests that they may have. From a public health point of view, the most important measure that we need to stick to is the implementation of the protocols, and one of those policies is the mixing, the not allowing tourists to mix directly within our communities, and ensuring that the protocols are adhered to at the level of the accommodation sector. A test is not a vaccine. It does not mean that later on within the state that they can't become positive. Having a test on arrival would be an alert that this is a positive person, but the protocols that have been set up for the accommodation sector have been set up to allow that if a guest were to turn positive within that sector, the hotel workers would be protected. So we have to ensure that these measures are enforced. We have to ensure that the guests are not allowed to leave and go freely into the communities, and whatever sites and attractions that they choose to attend to, they maintain the level that was given to them on their approval. That being said, we remain open to new developments. As I said, this situation is fluid. There are new best practices that may come in, but we need to take a very critical view of what is being done and to what end it is being done before we decide to implement in country, which is what is presently happening on a local level. Thank you.
Thanks, CMO. I just want to clarify a few other things that have played with our minds a little bit, and I believe they're important because they'll change the context of this discussion that we've been having about testing and tourists. I want to deal first of all with the call by the SLHTA, only to say that our meetings with them to try to clarify and understand the motivation behind public pronouncements made about a second test would have concluded that their call would have been more exploratory rather than conclusive. And so most of the members that we have spoken to have confirmed that they're very happy with the protocols that our Ministry of Health have put together. The protocols are working. They personally have not seen any transmission of the virus from guests to staff, and the hotels continue to work with us to ensure that we monitor them properly and we work with them as much as we can. The other thing is that the Prime Minister of Barbados, it is important to note that she did not say that 90% of the tourists going to that country is positive. And I pause for emphasis. What she did say was 90% of their 300 cases are positive, are from tourists. So I repeat for emphasis, she did not say that 90% of Barbados' tourists, which totals 18,000 people, because if that was so, Barbados would have had, the math would have been somewhere at 16,000. They would have had exactly 16,200 cases, but they don't. Instead, they have 300 cases. So 90% of their total cases, which is 300, have come from tourists. So we just want to clarify that. And I think that I really would like to ask you, members of the press, because then I believe what it does, it then puts into context, and then we don't scare everyone, because what that could do is it could send the impression to individuals that if 90% of the cases of a particular island are positive, then what is happening to us? So I just want to clarify that.
Okay, we do have a plan for that. Most what we have done, even at executive, that we try to have one set of persons in and another set out. So what you would find, if there is transmission, that some individuals would still be available for work. We have had departments where persons stay home for a day, and the others, half of those individuals are in. And hence the reason it was necessary to bring in these 200 additional persons who could assist in the fight. Thanks.
We also heard word that the cadet corps is supposed to be on standby just in case many stations are impacted. Is there any truth to this?
Yes, actually we had discussion with the hierarchy of the cadet, and they have agreed. So it's just a matter of implementation of that. So they are on standby, and when needed, they would be called in.
I have one more to the CFO. Is there a holdup, or what is the holdup for St. Lucia joining the COVAX facility to secure access to a vaccine when it becomes available?
Okay, let me clear that up. There is no hold up with St. Lucia joining. We are a part of the COVAX facility with PAHO. We usually get our vaccines through the PAHO revolving fund, and they ensure a level of safety and efficacy. The COVAX facility is now working with the three contenders for the vaccine to ensure a level of equity for some of the smaller countries when the vaccine does become available. We are working closely with PAHO on our implementation plan to ensure that when we do get the vaccine, the specific groups who need to be the first to get it will get it. So we anticipate by the first 6 months of the year that this should be available to us. Our teams are working closely with them, and we are working closely on implementation. We will be giving that information out to the press very soon on how far we are. We also form a part of 6 countries who will be getting funding to assist us in getting our first set of vaccine in country.
Thank you, CMO, for that. We also had, Jaka has put her hand down. We had someone via Zoom, PH602915. Who's that? I see Jaka has put her hands up, so I suspect that she's got another question. So Jaka, you will close it now. This is the last question that we're accepting.
Well, that's an honor, first of all. But my question is for Commissioner Davey. In regards to the wardens, could you please describe the training program that they will be put through, and how long will that training last? What will it entail? And there have also been concern about these wardens having the power of arrest. So what tools or equipment will they have, if any?
Okay, part of the training would be for one week initially. However, that would not be all for the training. they would be going out there along with other officers so that they would be getting on-the-job training. Officers teaching them the how the approach to individuals and so on. And it would be a continuing phase. We would also be having the weekend or after work training. So it is a continuous, it would be continuous training. It's not just that we give them 1 week and that is it. We would try as much as possible. Also, we would be doing the Zoom training, and a package would be given to them where they would have all other information that on their own they would be able to get access to. So the training, it would be the training that a special constable would be getting. So it's just that it would be condensed in such form. So in the first week, they would have what it takes them to know about the job and what they are going to be doing out there. And one of the things that I indicated is that they would be there with other officers. So once officers are together, the most senior person is the one to take or to direct what action is being taken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daisy. I'm very generous. It's Friday. If anybody here, one more question. Oh, sorry. There's one from Zoom. So it's PH Loop. Or Loop. Okay. Yes. So. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks very much for taking my question. I'm Paul Henry.
Paul Henry. Sorry, Paul.
Right, good. I represent the Loop News. Just a clarification from the deputy. Mr. Deputy, it was reported that the security minister's grandson was among the persons who attempted to enter the island through the back door, so to speak. But what I want to clarify is whether he was charged as well.
Okay,
I'm not sure the charges.
That I am not sure of, because I don't even know the minister's grandson's name. However, what a report would come as to the number of persons, the individuals that were in there, but to be specific, I am not aware of that. And the report I gave for it was this morning. The two incidents, one in Dennery and one in Grosile, it was this morning. The one at Dennery was about 1 a.m. and the one at Grosile was sometime later in the morning. So I am not aware that the minister's grandson was one of those persons that I mentioned.
Okay. And in any event, hello?
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
Yes, go ahead.
Right, so in any event, so the security minister said that he will not get any favorable treatment, or whatever the case is. Is there anything you would like to say to the public as it regards that? Because some people maybe have the opinion that he is the grandson of the security minister, so he would be getting favorable treatment. Would he be getting any treatment different to what a regular member, so to speak, of the public would get if such a breach occurred?
No, there would be no special treatment to anyone except if the person is a diplomat, which I don't think he holds that title. So everybody those who were warned, everybody would be, if it is a warning, everybody would be warned. If it is an arrest, everybody would be arrested and then taken to court. So there would be no special treatment for anyone.
And finally, what would the charge be?
That, as I said, I was not.
No, I mean, generally.
No, if the person is coming in, it would be for illegal entry. As I indicated earlier, I'm not sure of the circumstances. If it is illegal entry, our immigration department will be dealing with this. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, HTS would like another one. So we'll allow HTS final question before we wrap up.
There's growing concern from some factions of society that the island might be swiftly moving into a police state. We have wardens, we have police, we have city police, all looking to enforce. We recently heard from Recover St. Lucia, Dr. King in particular, former CMO, that we should be focusing on a behavioral campaign strategy. But CMO, you just recently, you said a while ago that we have the potential of reaching 1,000 cases by next week, or if we relax the protocol. So how do we strike that balance between persons feeling like they still have their civil liberties and also protecting on a hold the island?
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. And exactly what the term you use is the balance. And so we continue to try to use persuasion. We have at all times tried to use persuasion to cause behavioral changes. But as I've said repeatedly today, sadly, some people are not listening. And maybe we have to go back to almost like a school mentality where the teacher has to stand over you to get you to do your homework, or your parents have to sit over you to get you to do your homework. But this is sufficiently important enough that we're not leaving it to any one protocol. So I'm very heartened by the private sector. I singled out the brewery and the distillery in particular, who are converting billboards, converting radio ads and TV ads to behavioral changes that are required, that they've reached out to over 1,000 bars to help them put up signage. There are businesses that have actually put up dividers next to where the cashiers are in the business houses. And it's this level of collaboration that we need. I would like to see even more work being done in that regard. I really believe everybody's voice needs to be added to this. And this is why, even from a political perspective, there can be no divide on this situation. Everybody needs to wear their face mask, everybody needs to practice social distancing, and everybody needs to practice their hygiene. Does it mean that people can't be critical of government policy? That's not what we're saying. Okay, we live in a democracy. There will always be differences in terms of some of the policies, but we believe on behavior and also on fighting COVID, there should be only one voice. We should be all unified in that purpose. If you think of it as a small country, in terms of financial resources, in terms of access to vaccines on a timely basis, in access of ventilators, we're marginalized. And therefore, we have to use what resources we have wisely. We do know, thankfully, that the fight of COVID really depends on individual behavior and commitment. We can't blame anybody else if we're not following the rules. Who do we want to blame? So we all have to take on that personal responsibility. And I'm really hoping that everyone in St. Lucia of a leadership role will continue to play their part. The musicians have been doing an amazing job. Business houses, as I said, NGOs have been doing it. I'm happy to see that the opposition is stepping up to the plate in that regard as well. There is no difference between all of us in regards to this. Whether our economic recovery, which sectors we're helping out, all those things are going to be under constant scrutiny. So I just want to say that we believe that it's both. Continue to promote and educate persons on behavior, but sadly it's gotten to the point, and to the numbers that you've spoken of and the challenge that the CMO has spoken of, and the consequences of not acting now. If you know that shutting down the economy is not an option, therefore strengthening our authority is important. And so we're not looking to go around arresting anybody, but we're certainly looking to let people know that there's more eyes and that we're working with people if we're seeing that they're challenged, they don't really know what the protocols are, is for those wardens also to identify to the Ministry of Health and to the command center that we have a problem, and to get them as much support as we possibly can. Nobody's looking to penalize anybody. There's enough pain going around that the last thing we want to do is to do that. But when you hear, with all the evidence, that people would still be looking to support persons coming in illegally, it boggles the mind. You have to say that. And therefore, there is some level of enforcement that is going to be required, sadly, to make sure that we protect, because ultimately, as a government, that's our responsibility, is to protect all the lives of every single person in St. Lucia.
Mr. Prime Minister, you had another job to do for me, and that was to close, to do some closing remarks as we bring this press conference to close. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I just want to really say that I think that we should all be comforted that the policies of the government are working. So we've seen a change in the trend, not sufficiently to have dropped all of the protocols that we've introduced, which we've discussed. We're seeing that the economic recovery plan of trying to get people back into work and make sure that persons have incomes in their homes, that's working. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that every single person in St. Lucia has been satisfied, but I think that we're getting to the point where the limited resources that the state has can be used now to help some of the more vulnerable people in our society. All of us should help in identifying who those persons are. Okay, the Ministry of Equity and the social workers are stretched. But I know that the churches are playing a significant role. A lot of the NGOs are playing a significant role. But all of us need to be each other's brother's keeper. I keep saying that. And if in fact there are individuals who are struggling, who cannot make ends meet, who aren't getting sufficient food, who are psychologically under pressure, because this is a very stressful period, please help. Please let the authorities know, whether it's the police, whether it's the social workers, whether it's the health workers. We're all here to try to help. And it doesn't really matter what political persuasion anybody is. Everybody will be helped. But sometimes the system doesn't identify all those people that need. And that's where we really need everybody's help to make sure we're taking care of that. You know, we're approaching the Christmas season. It is a season for giving. It's a season of faith. It's a season to remind us how important family is. And if the year 2020 has shown us anything, it clearly has shown the importance of faith, to be appreciative of our Creator for what He has done for us. And it may seem that at times He's heartless, but I think for the most part, people would have to admit St. Lucia has been spared. Even though we've had a number of cases, we were able to put systems in place where the healthcare system has not been overwhelmed. It's very sad that 2 persons lost their lives on during this pandemic, but it tells you that anybody with any underlying diseases becomes even more vulnerable during this period. So it may not be that COVID was the ultimate cause it was the ultimate cause of death, but it certainly took away time that those persons could have been still alive with us today. So I want to thank the media houses for the assistance that you've been providing in communicating and getting these messages across. The Minister of Tourism highlighted a very difficult decision, and it's very important that we get the information correct. Keeping your borders open during this COVID period was always controversial. Always. And that's why we took baby steps in where we've come. But I think that we should, as a country, be very proud that with no playbook, that we were able to, as a team, to devise a bubble that has allowed tourism to grow. And we've said, faster than any other region in the Caribbean, and we're about to see an exponential growth in that sector, as well as keeping persons safe. That's a very difficult balance, and I think we need to be very proud of ourselves as to what we've achieved. I'm also very proud of the fact that with this community spread that we have, that the systems worked. The contact tracing team were able to go in and for the most part capture everybody. And I want you to think of it from a cancer perspective. So it's like having a tumor and going in and identifying the tumor, taking out the tumor. What is always left is on the margins, if I'm using the terminology correctly. And what you want to do is to make sure that the margins are as clean as possible. So there will always be times that you will have to go back in sometimes and dig a little bit deeper. And that's the process that's taking place here. But I think that we all should be very proud of the work that our officers have done and the way that they have acted and how everybody has come together. And it could have been much worse, because I know that there was a fair amount of panic and fear going around, and that seems to have been curtailed. And I think that people recognize that we have it under control, but we're not out of the woods as yet. And I'm really hoping that when we meet again in 2 weeks' time, that we would have seen even further progress, and that we will be able to enjoy really a well-deserved Christmas in which we can spend time with our families. So sometimes when these little things of just going to each other's homes, going to a beach, and just basic socializing, going to a restaurant, these are some things that sometimes we take for granted. And I would genuinely believe that with what's happened in 2020, many more people are going to have a greater appreciation for some of the simpler things in life. And let's not be like how we've been in the past, that 2 weeks after COVID is gone, that we're going to forget that. There are very important lessons, I think, that the good Lord has reminded us about. The importance of family, the importance of life, the ability to be disciplined in our own life, and cherishing some small mercies that we have. So again, on that note, I want to again say to all St. Lucians, please wear your face mask. Please practice social distancing and be very respectful to each other, and continue to do your hand sanitizing at all times. And please walk well and take care of yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Members of the press, this brings us to the end of our press conference. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for being such great partners, to you in the editorial departments and to your employers as well for partnering with us on the various aspects of our COVID-19 public awareness campaigns. We are very profoundly gratified, and we are very thankful for your efforts. So thank you so very much, and have a happy Friday and a pleasant weekend.